for the next piece on the London Sinfonietta's portrait programme, the music of Harrison Birtwistle, a piece called Carmen Arcadiae Mechanicae Perpetuum, which I think I've got just about right, which is written for the 10th anniversary of the Sinfonietta. Now, Harry, quite a lot of the clue to this piece, I think, is in the title. So can you just talk us through what that Latin concatenation means?
Me in Latin?
Well, it's mythic.
I'd like to begin somewhere else.
Of course.
We'll get back.
Yeah,
I'll
fine.
get back to you. I consider myself to be a sort of 1910 modernist. I mean, I really feel that was the thing that, and still is.
So you're that contemporary?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And cubism is my thing. That for some reason, and that thing of Picasso and Braque, making that. I don't think they knew fully what they were doing. I mean, I don't think they could justify. There's more theory come out of cubism than certainly that went into it. But it's.
It begs the question if you're making a comparison with your own music, but we'll get there.
Yeah. And so I rather, like the idea of a piece which is like sort of Picasso. I mean, no matter what he picked up, it was radical. I mean, and I imagine it was a sort of, oh God, I don't know how to express it, but a pipe or a pan, with little horns, and those things. I think they came a bit later, actually. But it's somewhere a sort of mythic thing. And it was also when I was working.
Well, you wanted to go for a mythic thing in this piece.
I'm not so sure. But anyway, it was at a time when I was working on the Oresteia with Tony Harrison.
At the National Theatre, along the
and I wanted the title to have a sort of antique, thing, rather like something on a wall, like Romans do. You did it, and they carried on the words, where the word ends and that. Like
so there's no punctuation. Yes, it's all capitals and
very four square, quite severe. Yeah, and. I'm sort of thrashing about at the moment but all these things contribute to what we're talking about, the idea of this piece. And I suppose that I like and this piece, if you had the time and the inclination, I could talk about this piece for 2 hours. and
it might be some overtime issues, but we could do 5 minutes.
No, yeah. And I like to think that, that anything I do, I try to sort of push it as far as I can and try to recognize it for what it is. And this piece is about something that I did actually push it right to its end and be very severe with myself. No concessions, no compromise. And so that's one aspect of the piece.
Okay, but what are the things are you pushing then? What are the things that you're pushing in yourself and in music?
Oh my God! The other part of the title is also somebody that made a great influence on me was Paul Klee, not a composer but a painter. And it was his, I read his pedagogical books about the way that he examined the nature of the material of what, with painting in his case, right from the beginning, as though it had never existed. And that rang a bell on me, in me. And this piece is concerned with that thing. If I can get it quite, I'll give you a concept that meant such a lot to me from him. And I mean, you unravelled it, didn't you?
That's very flattering. I think we should let you do this much better. Tell us what the thing is.
He invented the expression dividual, which was his word, and individual. Something individual is something that if you take a piece of it away, it cannot. It's destroyed, or it loses its totality. Yeah.
Whereas if it's
something which is dividual, is like a frieze, like wallpaper. If you take an element away, it still retains its form. And so if you think of a bottle with liquid in it, half full. If you break the bottle, that is individual. The bottle is no longer used. Mm-hmm. The water in it is individual because of, or if it's wine, it is that wine. But the quantity is dividual.
Because you can have larger quantities of wine or water.
You can have more of it.
So it's something to do with the relationship between forms and repetition and those sorts of things. Now, Harry, you talk, one of the things about the composition of this piece is that you said you could go on for 2 hours, but this piece itself could exist for an hour and a half, 2 hours, because of what you did to reduce it down, or rather to give us the 15-minute piece that we're going to hear.
Yeah, and
I mean, you created in effect a frieze of this piece.
I created a frieze which, if I'd composed it out, could have lasted. It depends what tempo I use, but I did at least 10% more of what it is here, and then I subjected it to randomly cutting out a piece of something which would last 15 minutes.
Okay.
And so that, in essence, it was something that was removed from my choice of why.
So, but what that frieze consisted of, you identified that there are 6 kinds of music, or perhaps 6 mechanical Arcadian perpetual machines or songs in Carmen Arcadiae Mechanicae Perpetuum. And it was the relationship between how these bits of music would repeat. It was, and that's what you subjected to random processes, right?
Yeah, maybe there's 1 or 2 things I can give you. This music does not have any bridge passages, in that it never gradually goes anywhere.
It goes
it goes one thing and then another thing. Mm-hmm. And it's this juxtaposition of this material, this rhythm of this material is what the piece is, how the piece is constructed. But it's not just the 6 musics that I made, but it has an independent rhythm of dynamics which don't correspond to the music, and it has an independent rhythm of dynamics which do not, okay. So these layers of things, and the last one is an independent layer of register, high, middle, low, high and middle, high and low. So if you can imagine like a brick wall with these various strands on it, and so consequently things suddenly happen and things suddenly change.
For entirely random reasons that you're not in control of in a way.
No, I'm not.
Well, look, there are paradoxes here, because what the thing is, this piece sounds, I mean, it's almost a definition. It's like the DNA of the Birtwistle, of your musical DNA. Well, it is in some way. I mean, it's really a piece that sounds like you, right?
Yeah.
And yet it was made with these random things. Yeah. And then there's the question of like where the notes come from, things like that. Look, Harry, before we go further, I think we should hear some of this. So what we're going to do now is get into some of this brickwork, if you don't mind, and just a little detail. I want David Atherton, one of the London Sinfonietta's founders, who's the conductor for the next 2 pieces we're going to hear in Broken Images as well. David, if you could lead your ensemble of 40 musicians in the opening of Carmen Arcadiae. Thank you. Thank you. Now, that effectively is one of the machines that you're going to be listening to when we hear the piece all the way through. However, in what you've just heard, there are in fact 4 superimposed layers of rhythm in this wise. Let's hear the flute, oboe, bass, clarinet, and bassoon first. Thank you.
In simple terms, the rhythm is the same, but the notes are phased across it, so they're all in different places.
We're going to hear that.
Yeah.
Can we just go on and hear the other rhythm?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Same thing. Trumpet, horn, trombone. Again, same passage, violin 1, violin 2, viola, and cello. Okay, remember that's 3 layers so far. The 4th layer, the final rhythmic layer at least, is marimba, phone, and double bass. I'll be asking you all to sing these back, obviously. However, it is unfortunately yet more complicated that because in each of those 4 rhythmic strata, there were different cycles of pitch going on. I want to focus on the strings. Let's just hear the first violin playing all the notes so you can hear a pattern of 4 repeated pitches. Now let's hear the second violin. Now let's hear the viola. Okay, so you've got in the viola, you've got a cycle of 3 pitches in the violins, a cycle of 4 pitches. Let's hear them all together again as written. Thank you. Now, in fact, what you have is 13 separate musical layers going on, either belonging to these separate rhythmic strata or different pitch cycles. In other words, nobody's doing the same thing. So all that seems a frightfully complicated way to end up exactly where we started. Let's hear the whole passage put together. Thank you. Right. Now, Harry, after going under the bonnet there a bit on one of those machines, it shows that the detail at which you're working, that's 6 bars of music there.
I have to stress that what I was talking about previously was the piece as a whole, how it speaks through time in its entire duration. We're now talking about the individual cells within each of these pieces, yeah.
Which are incredibly formal and incredibly strict, as we just heard.
That's right.
So, look, how did you make those decisions then about about whether it was going to be 4 pitches against 3 and those rhythms? Because they feel like things that you have to decide. They can't be intuitive.
I became very interested in random numbers, and it sounds, we always refer to music as having soul and expression and expressing yourself and this and all that stuff. I still think that because of all these automatic processes, it's still my music. Nobody else could have written it.
Well, why is that then? Is that because the notes?
You tell me. I don't know. No, seriously.
Well, you'd have to. Well, no. Here's the answer.
All right. Good.
Which is the question.
You think you're all going to go away and think, oh, now we know what Birtwistle's all about. We don't have to listen to it anymore.
Look, but, do you want the answer to your...
Yeah, okay,
right, okay.
go on.
It's the questions you ask. You know, it's the way you use the random numbers that you ask that mathematician in Cambridge to get you, and it's the questions you ask. It's the fact that you're interested in creating these formal blocks and interested in having a frieze of material and interested in 6 things next to one another and interested also in that particular kind of sound world.
Yeah, but I would also say that that cannot be achieved by any other means. There is no other way. You can't.
You couldn't intuit it.
No, you couldn't. You couldn't do that intuitively. No, you couldn't.
But
it
look,
would be impossible. And it's a rhythmic thing, really. In the end, that.
Okay.
You know, it's a rhythmic device.
Well, I think there's that sort of vitalizing energy that goes through this piece. Oh, Matt, you see, the thing is, you end up using words like I was going to say, it doesn't sound organic, inevitable, those things, and yet there is some momentum that carries through.
Yeah,
this
well,
whole
the
structure.
momentum in it is, if you listen to it, you don't know where the repeat is.
Even though you know something's repeating.
Yeah, I mean, because you listen to it and you say, oh, that, no, yes, no, it's not there. So it's always somewhere else. It's redefining itself constantly.